picture, by the way. First year out. I can summarize my school experience so far with just one word: procrastination. I used to prioritize anything over homework, but over time, my main distraction became social media, and gradually, my unhealthy habit turned into more of a compulsion than an option. It got to the point where I lost the ability to control my time entirely. While I was aware of its distracting effect on me, it wasn't until I researched social media that I discovered that this and other issues I struggle with are all common symptoms of addiction. Social media addiction is an underemphasized condition that plagues modern society. It rules over countless lives, oftentimes unnoticed. The issue is so intense that multiple countries such as China and South Korea have declared it a public health hazard, and clinics around the world devote themselves to treating it. Its addictive format is actually an intentional feature, and the condition it causes leaves its prey with horrible symptoms, and despite this, we treat it as a necessity. By being informed on the topic, we can protect ourselves from social media, and in doing so, we can bring change to its addictive format. Social media is addictive by design because it's an attention economy, meaning that platforms don't sell a physical product. Instead, they sell their users' attention to advertisers. This model encourages platforms to compete with one another to get users to spend most of their time scrolling. And what easier way is there to do that than by addicting them? Therefore, platforms employ methods that take advantage of their users' physiological responses, forcing them to scroll from unhealthy periods. Most of these strategies take advantage of the brain's release of dopamine, the chemical that makes us feel happy. Just as alcohol, heroin, and almost all other addictive substances do, social media usage increases dopamine release, making users feel brief moments of content. Many crave this and use it as an excuse to disregard their overusage. However, immediately after stopping heavy social media usage, our brains plunge into states of dopamine deficiency, often leaving us feeling even worse afterwards. Platforms use many strategies to increase dopamine release. I personally believe that the most notable technique is intermittent variable rewards, since it's what I feel fueled my addiction the most. This term refers to when simple activities are linked with rewards varying in frequency or magnitude. For instance, when a gambler uses a slot machine, pulling a lever, the activity, is linked with the possibility of winning a jackpot, the varying reward. In this sense, social media is a slot machine. Social media is a slot machine. The possibility of feeding dopamine demands, or the jackpot, forces users to continue scrolling and satisfying their addictions beyond reasoning. The mechanism known as infinity scroll only aids this system. Since the pool of content is virtually infinite, platforms have the resources to remove all stopping cues, like the bottom of a page encouraging users to take breaks, allowing users to scroll through content indefinitely. I'd like to clarify that these are only two of the many mechanisms platforms use to addict their users. The issue of social media dependence only worsens when these tactics are paired with its worldwide accessibility and approval. According to statistical data, Facebook alone now has roughly 3 billion active users. It reaches over 1/3 of the world population through just a single platform. Unfortunately, along with social media comes its addictive format. A government study of students in India assessed that the prevalence of social media addiction among the users was 36.9%, over 1/3 of users. This proportion with the one prior shows how incredibly common social media addiction is. With such a frequency, we must do what we can to prevent the addiction, as countless studies have proven that it harbors various consequences. Social media addiction causes behavioral effects that stem from it distracting users from their real-world responsibilities, causing them to develop procrastinative patterns. The government study in India found that compared with healthy users, addicts were 2.6 times more prone to behavioral changes, such as sleep disturbance, neglect of personal hygiene, and failure to eat regularly. The addiction causes many other symptoms in addition to these patterns. If one continuously overuses social media, the dopamine deficient state that signing off causes can induce lasting states of displeasure, better known as depression. A University of Pittsburgh study of adult Americans showed that problematic patterns of social media usage was connected with significantly deeper symptoms of depressive disorder. which come from these displeasurable states. Again, these are only some of the many symptoms of addiction, of social media addiction, such as anxiety, lack of focus, and isolation. We must do what we can to prevent these symptoms, and this begins with spreading awareness of the topic. I, for instance, had little knowledge of my addiction before researching it. Had I likely would have begun limiting my usage before the symptoms worsened. Just as it helped me, knowledge of the addiction could help many users prevent their addictions, and many addicts recognize theirs. However, knowledge of its effects only goes so far. At a certain point, we must convince platforms to reform their addictive technology. Some platforms already implement anti-addiction tools, like notifications to be mindful of usage, and studies have proven that these help counter overuse. However, studies have also proven that most users ignore these tools. By simply using them to protect ourselves and recommending them to others, we can convince platforms to refine and recommend them, ultimately leading to a better social media that helps and encourages healthier usage. It's easy to ignore the issue and just scroll to our heart's content, but letting social media's selfish schemes go unchecked puts hundreds of millions of lives at risk of terrible effects. By simply spreading knowledge about the issue and protecting ourselves from it, we could prevent countless addictions, and we could convince companies to reform their addictive technology. Social media profits off of our hardships. Let's not let it go unchecked. Thank you.